Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, 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 Namanda. Good morning. I'd like to first thank those of you for coming out when it's an early East Coast game for the Seahawks today. And please excuse my voice. I've been screaming a lot this week. Between the Game 5 of the Mariners playoffs and then the two close Kraken games, it's gotten to be a little on the throat this week for Seattle sports fans. Anyway, also the Sounders won. Anyway, so that's the sports. And the Huskies. It is a perfect sports week. We're doing it. So today I wanted to talk about actually one of the things that we just did our reading about. Whenever we do the three treasures, we're talking about three specific things, right? The Buddha, the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, and the Sangha. And there's a specific the Sangha of all of the three has been argued by Buddhist academics as the most important. And so I wanted to talk about some of the reasons that we're here, because the Sangha ultimately is the whole thing. And I'm going to go back to a little bit of my own history to talk about this, because before I started practicing Buddhism, I was working for the World Wide Web Consortium, so the group that protected all of the protocols of the World Wide Web, and it was founded by someone named Tim Berners-Lee, who created the first web browser and the web server and the HTML and HTTP. He was all anything that you've typed the first 4 characters of into a web browser, that was him. And he's also a fairly philosophical guy. So I've read a lot of what he's said about how he created the web, and one of the things that really stuck with me was that he wrote a paper and then has talked about it in other venues about how he came to name the web. And the analogy that he gave stuck with me, although the text of it didn't. And so I thought about this for a while. I was going to talk about this connection, and I couldn't find the reference to it. But it goes a little like this. Basically, so you are imagine you're sitting sort of in the center of a web. So you're kind of that little center point of it, and then that first little ring is your family. And then the next ring around it is like the people that live on your street. And then the next ring around that is like your church. And then the next ring around that is your neighborhood. And it goes concentrically out to the whole, globe, right? You have a connection to everyone that's in this world. And so the idea of the World Wide Web was that it would give you kind of a lot of influence within the center of your world, and then kind of a little bit of a kiss out there. And I wanted to talk about this, and I wanted to find the reference. And so what I did was I went out onto the web and I asked my former colleagues, hey, can you find this reference? And Alan Stearns, who's actually another one of the sort of pioneers of standards producing people, came back to me like 15 minutes later with this paper from 1998 that talks about the philosophy of naming the thing the web, right? So I literally found within my community the answer to the question that I was looking for. And I think that had stuck in my head from the moment that I heard it. It was like 2002, I think, was the first time that I read this thing that he had written. And then, of course, I come to Buddhism a few years later, and I hear the story of Indra's net. Indra's net is basically the same story. Like, imagine that all of us are little, that we are standing on, or we're basically dewdrops on the parts of a net that cross. So where the net is tied together, all of us are sitting in one of these places. And and that, kind of, if we're a spider that jumps on up and down on that, then the people closest to us feel it bumping around. But ultimately, everybody is connected to everybody else. And that's the story of the Sangha. And so I had this moment where sort of these two seemingly completely different parts of my life came and literally reconnected. The idea of a Sangha is something that the Buddha talked about frequently. Talked about this, throughout his entire life, about the concepts of interdependence. And he talked specifically about the Sangha of practitioners, to say sort of the monks that followed him. And that they were the ones that were able to propagate the teachings of Buddhism. And in his lifetime, the story goes that the Buddha was so proficient at this that he knew exactly what you needed to do in order to become enlightened. Of course, the Buddha himself died, passed into parinirvana 25 plus 100 years ago. So we don't have the living Buddha sitting here talking to us like he could to the people 2,600 years ago. But we had his teachings, the Dharma, the set of what was originally an oral tradition that became written down, and we had these teachings that we call the Dharma. And the story goes in Buddhism that if we don't have the Buddha and the Dharma has degraded, we've kind of, it's not as present in everything that we do as it would have been 2,500 years ago. The last remaining vestige of this system of Buddhism is the Sangha. It is the community of practitioners. And when we think about this, obviously, because of the fire and what's been happening since, I think a lot of us have been starting to think a lot about the temple and our relationship to it, what it means and what it means to us. And the thing that I want to suggest to Sangha, this temple doesn't exist except for there to be a community inside of it, right? When you talk about Buddhism, the Sangha is the thing, right? We are all here because of our relationship to Buddhism, but we're also here for our relationship to one another. And we have to understand that it isn't just a kind of transactional, I give my ichikai dues and I get, and I get to come here, right? This was something that is essentially transmitted to us from the people that came to the United States from Japan, saved up their money, built a temple, built another temple. We have this resource because people cared so much about the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha that they gave us a place to think about it. And in order for us to keep that strong, we need to keep those connections. We need to keep weaving that web, right? We need to have those connections be strong with one another, and not just within the. We have the BWA here, and we have Gojikai here, and we have Dharma School here, and Yaba. We have all of these. We can take these things and turn them into silos, and we can turn those into ways that we say, well, this is what I want for this. But the way that we have a vibrant community is for us to cross-pollinate, right? We need to sort of step out a little web. And so in the Dharma Exchange, we're going to actually do a little experiment with that. But the most important part of this is that this is a living thing, and we're kind of breathing new life into it as we speak. And one story, like just last week, I watched this happen, and it was just a sign of the vibrancy of this particular Sangha. We had about a dozen people come in, and they were from Quebec City, and they were on a layover on the way to Hawaii. And to see people come in before and say welcome, Reverend Castor came over and gave them a little introduction to what was going on here, and then afterwards, after they had introduced themselves to the Sangha, just kind of people came in waves and just kind of one off came off and started talking to them. And I think that's really, it's really an amazing thing to see, that we have that kind of vibrancy in our community. And I want to call that out today, just so that we can take a look at it, because it is the thing that is going to keep us going well into the future. So I want to thank you for coming this morning. Please get ready for Dharma Exchange, because it's going to be fun. And please join me in Gasho. Namo Amitabha. Namo Amitabha. Namanda. Namanda. Naman.